Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Ram, Ram Ram, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Medium. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. More. Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Go Premanande Haribo. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Narayanam Namaskritya Naram Chaiva Narottamam Devim Sarasatim Vyasam Tato Jayam Udiraye. We're reading from the Srimad Bhagavatam, Canto 10, Chapter 1, the Advent of Lord Krishna. For those of you who are still in the mode of Janmashtami, which we may be all year, right? And the text is number 4. And the word for word, nivritta, released from, tarshai, lust or material activities, upagiyamanat, which is described or sung, bhava ashaudat, which is the right medicine for the material disease, shotra, the process of oral reception, mana, the subject matter of thought for the mind, abhiramat, from the pleasing vibrations from such glorification, ka, who, uttama shloka, of the Supreme Personality of Godhead, guna anuvadat, from describing such activities, puman, a person, virajeta, can keep himself aloof, vina, except, pashugnat, either a butcher or one who is killing his own personal existence. The translation is, glorification of the Supreme Personality of God, it is performed in the parampara system. That is, it is conveyed from the spiritual master to disciple. Such glorification is relished by those no longer interested in the false temporary glorification of this cosmic manifestation. Descriptions of the Lord are the right medicine for the conditioned soul undergoing repeated birth and death. Therefore, who will cease hearing such glorification of the Lord except a butcher or one who is killing his own self? Nivrittatar upagiyamana bhavaushadash chotra manobhirama ka uttama shloka gunanuvada Buman virajeta vina pashugna. Would someone like to chant? Tatar rupakiyamana Bhaval shadat shotra mano biraman Uttama shloka gunanavada Venajeta vina pashugna. Una más, por favor. Shupagiyamana Shochamino birama Uttama shloka gunanavada. Here's the purport. In India, it is the practice among the general populace to hear about Krishna, either from Bhagavad Gita or from Srimad Bhagavatam, in order to gain relief from the disease of repeated birth and death. Although India is now fallen, when there is a message that someone will speak about Bhagavad Gita or Srimad Bhagavatam, thousands of people still gather to hear. This verse indicates, however, that such recitation of Bhagavad Gita and Srimad Bhagavatam must be done by persons completely freed from material desires, nivritta tarshai. Everyone within this material world, beginning from Brahma down to the insignificant ant, is full of material desires for sense enjoyment. And everyone is busy in sense gratification. But when thus engaged, one cannot fully understand the value of Krishna Katha, either in the form of Bhagavad Gita or in Srimad Bhagavatam. If we hear the glories of the Supreme Personality of Godhead from liberated persons, this hearing will certainly free us from the bondage of material activities. But hearing Srimad Bhagavatam spoken by a professional reciter cannot actually help us achieve liberation. Krishna Katha is very simple. In Bhagavad Gita it is said that Krishna is the Supreme Personality of Godhead. As he himself explains, Matak paratanam nanya kinchidasti dhananjaya. O Arjuna, there is no truth superior to me. Simply by understanding this fact, that Krishna is the Supreme Personality of Godhead, one can become a liberated person. But especially in this age, because people are interested in hearing Bhagavad Gita from unscrupulous persons who depart from the simple presentation of Bhagavad Gita and distort it for their personal satisfaction, they fail to derive the real benefit. There are big scholars, politicians, philosophers, and scientists who speak on Bhagavad Gita in their own polluted way, and people in general hear from them, being uninterested in hearing the glories of the Supreme Personality of Godhead from a devotee. A devotee is one who has no other motive for reciting Bhagavad Gita and Srimad Bhagavatam than to serve the Lord. Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu has therefore advised us to hear the glories of the Lord from a realized person, Bhagavata Parodiya Bhagavata Sthani. Unless one is personally a realized soul in the science of Krishna consciousness, a neophyte should not approach him to hear about the Lord, for this is strictly forbidden by Srila Sanatana Goswami, who quotes from the Padma Purana, Avaishnava mukont girnam bhutam harikatam ratam shravanam naiva kartavyam sarpo chishtam yatapaya. One should avoid hearing from a person not situated in Vaishnava behavior. A Vaishnava is nivritta trishna. That is, he has no material purpose, for his only purpose is to preach Krishna consciousness. So-called scholars, philosophers, and politicians exploit the importance of Bhagavad Gita by distorting its meaning for their own purposes. Therefore, this verse warns that Krishna Katha should be recited by a person who is nivritta trishna. Shukadeva Goswami epitomizes the proper reciter for Srimad Bhagavatam, and Parikshit Maharaj, who purposefully left his kingdom and family prior to meeting death, epitomizes the person fit to hear it. A qualified reciter of Srimad Bhagavatam gives the right medicine, bhavaushadhi, for the conditioned souls. The Krishna consciousness movement is therefore trying to train qualified preachers to recite Srimad Bhagavatam and Bhagavad Gita throughout the entire world, so that people in general in all parts of the world may take advantage of this movement and thus be relieved of the threefold miseries of material existence. The instructions of Bhagavad Gita and the descriptions of Srimad Bhagavatam are so pleasing that almost anyone suffering from the threefold miseries of material existence will desire to hear the glories of the Lord from these books and thus benefit on the path of liberation. Two classes of men, however, will never be interested in hearing the message of Bhagavad Gita and Srimad Bhagavatam: those who are determined to commit suicide and those determined to kill cows and other animals for the satisfaction of their own tongues. Although such persons may make a show of hearing Srimad Bhagavatam at a Bhagavata Saptaha, this is but another creation of the karmis, who cannot derive any benefit from such a performance. The word pashugnat is important in this connection. Pashugna means butcher. Persons fond of performing ritualistic ceremonies for elevation to the higher planetary systems must offer sacrifices, yagyas, by killing animals. Lord Buddhadev therefore rejected the authority of the Vedas because his mission was to stop animal sacrifices, which are recommended in Vedic ritualistic ceremonies. Nindasi yagya varir ahaha shuti chatam sadaya hridaya darshita pashugatam keshavadrita buddha sharira jaya jagadisha hare. Gita Govinda. Even though animal sacrifices are sanctioned in Vedic ceremonies, men who kill animals for such ceremonies are considered butchers. Butchers cannot be interested in Krishna consciousness, for they are already materially allured. Their only interest lies in developing comforts for the temporary body. Bhogaishvarya prasaktanam taya prahita chetasam vyavasayatmika buddhi samadao navadiyate. In the minds of those who are too attached to sense enjoyment and material opulence, and who are bewildered by such things, the resolute determination of devotional service to the Supreme Lord does not take place. Bhagavad Gita 2:44. Srila Narottam Das Thakur says, Manusha janama paya radha krishna na pajiya janiya shunya vishakaye nu. Anyone who is not Krishna conscious and who therefore does not engage in the service of the Lord is also pashugna, for he is willingly drinking poison. Such a person cannot be interested in Krishna Katha because he still has a desire for material sense gratification. He is not Nivritta Trishna. As it is said, Traivargi kaste purusha vimukha hari medasa. Those interested in Trivarga, that is, in Dharma, Artha, and Kama, are religious for the sake of achieving a material position with which to gain better facilities for sense gratification. Such persons are killing themselves by willingly keeping themselves in the cycle of birth and death. They cannot be interested in Krishna consciousness. For Krishna Katha, topics about Krishna consciousness, there must be a speaker and a hearer, both of whom can be interested in Krishna consciousness if they are no longer interested in material topics. One can actually see how this attitude automatically develops in persons who are Krishna conscious. Although the devotees of the Krishna consciousness movement are quite young men, they no longer read materialistic newspapers, magazines, and so on, for they are no longer interested in such topics, nivritta tarshai. They completely give up the bodily understanding of life. For topics concerning Uttama Shloka, the Supreme Personality of Godhead, the spiritual master speaks and the disciple hears with attention. Unless both of them are free from material desires, they cannot be interested in topics of Krishna consciousness. The spiritual master and disciple do not need to understand anything more than Krishna, because simply by understanding Krishna and talking about Krishna, one becomes a perfectly learned person. Kasmin bhagavato vijnate sarvam idam vijnatam bhavati. The Lord sits within everyone's heart, and by the grace of the Lord, the devotee receives instructions directly from the Lord himself, who says in Bhagavad Gita 15:15, Sarvasya chaham riti sannivishto mattak smritir jnana matpohanam cha vedaishta sarver ahameva vedyo vedanta krit veda videva chaham. I am seated in everyone's heart, and from me come remembrance, knowledge, and forgetfulness. By all the Vedas I am to be known. Indeed, I am the compiler of Vedanta, and I am the knower of the Vedas. Krishna consciousness is so exalted that one who is perfectly situated in Krishna consciousness, under the direction of the spiritual master, is fully satisfied by reading Krishna Katha as found in Srimad Bhagavatam, Bhagavad Gita, and similar Vedic literatures. Since merely talking about Krishna is so pleasing, we can simply imagine how pleasing it is to render service to Krishna. When discourses on Krishna Katha take place between a liberated spiritual master and his disciple, Others also sometimes take advantage of hearing these topics and also benefit. These topics are the medicine to stop the repetition of birth and death. The cycle of repeated birth and death, by which one takes on different bodies again and again, is called bhava, or bhava rog. If anyone willingly or unwillingly hears Krishna Katha, his bhava rog, the disease of birth and death, will certainly stop. Therefore, Krishna Katha is called bhavaushadha, the remedy to stop the repetition of birth and death. Karmis, or persons attached to material sense enjoyment, generally cannot give up their material desires. But Krishna Katha is such a potent medicine that if one is induced to hear Krishna Kirtan, he will certainly be freed from this disease. A practical example is Dhruva Maharaj, who at the end of his tapasya was fully satisfied. When the Lord wanted to give Dhruva a benediction, Dhruva refused it. Swamin kritartosmi param najache. My dear Lord, he said, I am fully satisfied. I do not ask for any benediction for material sense gratification. We actually see that even young boys and girls in the Krishna consciousness movement have given up their long practice of bad habits like illicit sex, meat eating, intoxication, and gambling, because Krishna consciousness is so potent that it gives them full satisfaction. They are no longer interested in material sense gratification. I first offer my respectful obeisances to His Divine Grace, A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Prabhupada, to all the previous acharyas, and to all the assembled devotees. Vancha kalpatarubhascha kripasinabhevacha patitanam pavanebhyo vaishnavebhyo namo namaha. Nivrittatarsha means that one no longer has a thirst for the temporary material world. And as Prabhupada explains it, we're doing business here in the material world. And when one realizes that whatever little profit one may think one's getting from doing business here in the material world is not worth it. My wife Nirakula had a client who had 2 restaurants in the Bay Area. And every time I walked by one of them, which is in our hometown of Burlingame, I saw that it was packed. But her client told her, yes, our restaurants are doing great, but it's not worth it. She sold them, gave up the business. And there's a way in which the material world is ultimately profitless, because whatever we get in our business is taken back. When Prabhupada was speaking at a Rotary Club meeting, he gave an example of a person who in the morning was without wealth, but he got some advice from somebody about a stock he could invest in that day that would make him a lot of money. And he approached his stockbroker, who invested him in the stock. And later in the afternoon, the stockbroker called him and said, now you're a multimillionaire. And then at the end of the day, when the stock market closed, he called him back and said, now you're again broke, poor, because the stock crashed at the end of the day on some adverse news. So Prabhupada gave that example to the business people at the Rotary, and he said, material life is like this. He said, whatever profit you get, you lose it when you leave this body. So Nivrittatarsha means one who has categorically understood that the material world isn't a great idea and winds up his business activity here. Divestment from whatever one thinks one is going to gain in the material world. It doesn't mean that one artificially renounces the world. One has to be prudent. Tavat karma nakurvita na nirvidyeti yavata matkata shravanadalva shad yavan najayate. Krishna says to Uddhava in the 11th canto of the Srimad Bhagavatam that Tavat, until that time that one is fully awakened to one's faith in Krishna consciousness, especially in hearing about Krishna, one must go on with all of one's ordinary duties in order to maintain oneself in the material world and cultivate Krishna consciousness. And as one cultivates Krishna consciousness, it acts like medicine, vivaushati. Means even if there are attachments within the heart to the false material world, gradually by the potency of the sound vibration of Krishna Katha, those are winnowed out from the heart. As we know, the paragraph starting with Shrinvatam Swakata Krishna and ending with Vidite Hridaya Grantish Chitante Sarva Samshaya indicates that by the regular dosage of this medicine, by taking the regular and the recommended dosage, which is Nityam Bhagavata Sevaya, to hear constantly. Our acharyas say, however, that most people can't hear constantly. Therefore, Nityam means at least once a day. One must hear. Otherwise, if you skip a day, you may forget. And then it could become a month, a year, and a lifetime. But Krishna Katha is Bhavaushati. Aushati means medicinal. And Bhava means this material world. Bhava actually means that which is becoming something else. Whatever we get here requires maintenance because it's always falling apart. And we can't hold on to it ultimately. So Bhavaushati means the medicine that cures us from our attachment to the temporary material world. People are hapless in the material world because they have no information about Krishna. And whatever grandiose arrangements they make, big houses, businesses, fancy schmancy cars, literature even, when they are not pointed towards the ultimate goal of life, which is prema pumarto mahan, to attain love for God, they simply become a burden. One has to work hard to maintain them, and there's no tangible result. It's what we like to call insult to injury. It's an insult in the first place to be in the material world. As it says, Deyam sada paribhavagnam abhishtadoham. It's mentioned by Karabhajana Muni in the 11th canto of the Srimad Bhagavatam, relationship to Lord Chaitanya. If you meditate on Lord Chaitanya and do his work, Deyam sada, he's fit to be meditated upon. Paribhava gnam. Gnam means to stop something, and paribhava means the embarrassment of living in the material world. So, unless one has service to Lord Chaitanya and the proper object of meditation, meditating on Lord Chaitanya and hearing Krishna Katha, then one is hapless and subjected to this insult and the injury of living in the material world. Therefore, when Prabhupada mentions the purport about Krishna Katha, he also mentions that it's the duty of those, or the service of those who are hearing Krishna Katha, who are appreciating it, who are nivrittatarshare themselves, to teach it to others. So we see people who are in ignorance. If we give them an opportunity to hear Krishna Katha, then Maya mukta jivera nahi swata Krishna gyan. Although it's not automatic that they'll come out of Maya, nobody will, unless jivera kripa koila Krishna Veda Puran, unless they're given an opportunity to hear Krishna Katha. So these two, meaning hearing Krishna Katha regularly and also distributing it to others by preaching it and distributing books, of course, so people can take them and read them themselves, are the preoccupation of the devotees of the Krishna consciousness movement. And the question, ka, in this verse, who is there that won't do this, comes up in various places. For instance, in the first chapter of the Bhagavatam, the sages at Naimisaranya have gathered Kova bhagavatastasya punya shloke dikarmana shujikamina shunayat yasya kali malapaham. Who is there who has understood the ills of Kali Yuga who won't do this? Asking the same question. Who's not interested in this? And that question comes up when Uddhava mentions to Vidura the glories of Lord Krishna. It's third canto. He says, "Aho bhakiyam stanakalakutam jigam sayapayat apyasadvi." And at the end he says, "Kambadale olum sharanam brajema." Who wouldn't take shelter of Krishna? Putana tried to kill him, and he liberated her. Because he only saw, well, she dressed like a devotee anyway. She put on tilak. We'll count it. She'll take supreme liberation, become an associate of his in the spiritual world. So then, Kambadayalum Sharanam Brajena. Who would take shelter of anybody else? So there are false shelters in this material world, but the real shelter is Krishna. And here we have a very practical way of taking shelter of Krishna. The prime means is to avail oneself to the sound vibration of Krishna consciousness. And Prabhupada mentions in this purport that even if one has a slight interest in Krishna consciousness, or he says here, if one hears it willingly or unwillingly, you caught that? Willingly or unwillingly Krishna Kirtan. So that's sort of the prerogative of Prabhupada. He understood the potency of Krishna Katha. He talked about it on his way to America. He obviously prepared the Srimad Bhagavatam to bring it. And then willingly or unwillingly, he induced people to, that is, he induced people, whether they were willing or unwilling, to take to the hearing process by, and Lord Chaitanya did it too, by doing public kirtan, also by having open class on Bhagavad Gita. Anybody can walk in and just listen, as long as they're respectful. And by that, one becomes purified. So one may think that spiritual life is extremely austere, but actually, material life is 100% austere, because whatever we're doing gets taken away anyway. And Bhogaishvarya prasaktanam tayaparita chetasam. One doesn't allow oneself, or by the preoccupation with material enjoyment, one loses the ability to think of God. And because of that, one experiences no joy in life. It's completely empty. So we can regularly take the medicine of hearing about Krishna, and we can also distribute to other people. And we see from the next several verses in discussion about this, Parikshit Maharaj mentions that although he's hearing without stoppage for 7 days, he's not drinking water, he's not sleeping either. He said, "I'm not feeling inconvenience at all." He said, "Normally I would," and he's implying that at one time I got into trouble because I was thirsty. You remember that? He was in the forest on an excursion. He became thirsty and he went into the hermitage of Shamika Rishi. Shamika Rishi didn't acknowledge the king, and uncharacteristically, Parikshit became disturbed, found a dead snake, and wrapped it around the neck of the sage, after which his adolescent boy, Shringi, cursed the king to die in 7 days. So now he's hearing Krishna Katha, and he says, "Naishati dusahashunman tyaktodam apipadate pibantan twan mukamboja chutam harikatamritam." That is, he's saying to Shukadeva Goswami, this is amazing, that I'm not sleeping, I'm not eating, I'm not even drinking water. And he said, normally, and referring back, look how I got into trouble from being thirsty. Normally I would be troubled by these things, anybody would be. It's very difficult to bear not eating, not drinking, not sleeping, all those three things at one time. But he says, I don't feel any inconvenience whatsoever because chutam harikatamritam. Chuta means falling. like Achyuta. Achyuta means one who never falls. Achyuta means falling. What's falling? Kata Amritam, nectar of Krishna. Kata, from where? Shukadeva Goswami's mouth. So he said, that's what I'm drinking. So this is a sign of spiritual advancement, or I'll rephrase that. This is the sign of spiritual advancement. Jiva Goswami mentions in his Sandarbha that the primary symptom of one who's advancing, or to the degree that we're advancing, we can judge the degree to which we're advancing by our eagerness to hear Krishna Katha. And when one comes to the position of Nishta, one no longer is disturbed by sleep and the other urges, says Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur, because one has supplanted that by drinking something better. This drink is also mentioned in the beginning of the Srimad Bhagavatam, Pibantam Tvamukham Bhoja. No, that's this verse. I'm thinking Dharma Projita Kaitavotra Paramo Nirmatsaranam Satam Vedyam Vastamam Atra Shivadam Tapon Trayam Mulanam. No, it's the third verse. Nigama Kalpataror Galitam Balam Shukamukadam Rita Drava Samyutam. Pibata Bhagavatam Rasamalayam Ahor Aho Rasika Bhuvi Babuka. You know what that means? It's talking about Krishna Katha as a kind of intoxicant. Alayam means you take this and you may faint because in it you get intoxicated. And then it says, when you faint, and sooner or later you'll come back to consciousness. What should you do then? Drink some more. This is Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur's explanation of this. Pibantam means to drink. Pibantam rasamalayam. You're drinking this intoxicant, which is ironic because we have a no intoxication policy. So no intoxication. But the irony is that we're advocating intoxication. But it's not ironic in the sense that when you have real intoxication, then you're no longer interested in the caustic and troublesome intoxication of the material world. How can we administer this to others? Well, first by taking it ourselves, because then once we taste it, we'll be interested in giving it to others. We'll know its value. And then by arranging that other people can hear about Krishna, by getting books, by coming to classes and so forth, we can also induce them to take this drink. And then comes the next verse. Vasudeva kata prashna purusham strin punatihi vaktaram prachakam shrotrins tatpada salilam yata. This is in the discussion early on here in this chapter. As Shukadev, who's speaking that verse? Parikshit or Shukadev? Vasudeva kata prashna. Parikshit? Parikshit says, just as the Ganges purifies 3 worlds, Trin Punatihi. Trin means 3, Punati purifies. So, Salam Yata. Just as the Ganges is flowing down from the spiritual world, right? Say yes. And it purifies the 3 worlds as it descends. So he said, the same way, 3 entities get purified when this Krishna Katha is spoken. Who are the 3? Speaker, listener, and everybody else who happens to hear it. You know, Gopinath Acharya was there at the pastime when Lord Chaitanya first came to Jagannath Puri. And he was debating with his uncle, Sarvabhauma Bhattacharya. And he was also there, according to Jiva Goswami and Nandavadipdam Mahatmya, when Chaitanya Mahaprabhu spoke to Sarvabhauma about the Vedanta. Do you remember that? Say yes. How long did he speak for? Well, Sarvabhauma spoke for 7 days, and Lord Chaitanya didn't say anything. And then Sarvabhauma said, any questions? It's like, no. Usually my students ask questions. He said, you don't understand it? And he said, no, I understand that, but your explanation is ruining everything. Well, let's hear you explain it. And when Chaitanya Mahaprabhu explained it, it overwhelmed the intelligence of Sarvabhauma. He was the smartest person on the earth at that time. And he surrendered. But who was there also? Gopinath Acharya. He heard, incidentally, because he was nearby. Jiva Goswami said that's why in his next life he became Baladev Vidyabhushan. And he was able to speak the Govinda Bhasha. So you may sit and hear Krishna Katha and you think, what's the big deal? Well, if you want to speak the Bhasha of Govinda, you have to hear. And Krishna Katha doesn't change. It's eternal. Everything else changes. You can get a degree in physics, and you can bet your bottom dollar that 20 years from now, they're going to be completely different theories because it's always changing. It's like, oh, this is very interesting. What does it mean? We have no idea. But when you hear Krishna Katha, it refers to that which is eternal, ever increasingly beautiful and sublime. So our Krishna consciousness movement is based on these principles. Whatever brick and mortar we have, whatever digital infrastructure we have, whatever time we have in our hands, all these assets, they're meant for these two things. Hearing Krishna Katha and transmitting it to as many people as possible. And that's my thesis for today. Om Tat Sat. Now, let's see if you have any questions. Questions are hard, aren't they? Not for Radhika Rasika. Go ahead.
Hare Krishna Gurudev. I have one question. So, when we're talking about sages,
I don't think you need a microphone, but the audience online might.
Hare Krishna. Oh yeah. I have one question.
It's still not on. Where's Jishnu?
Haribo.
Can loosen that. Sorry.
Haribo.
Okay, go ahead.
Yeah. So when we're talking about the sages and kings and all Mahajans, they probably look at us as a sadhaki, yes? So, and
they look at us as what?
As a like we do sadhana, you're a sadhaka. So
yes.
So they have like completely different vision, like Vrajabasis. So to fully understand Krishna Katha, looks like we need some sort of developing of the Makchita Madgata Prana. So when Krishna already in our hearts, and look at the history of Maharaj Parikshit. So he had God in his heart, but what was his so was it his sadhana good enough?
Okay, ask a straightforward one-sentence question.
Yeah, so
what's your question?
Yeah, so how we develop that?
How do we develop
Makchita Madgata Prana when Krishna in our hearts? Is it only hearing, or it's a combination of sadhana and sadhu sangha?
Shushu Shoshadhanasya Vasudeva Kataruchi Syan Mahat Seveya Vipra Punya Tirtani. Syan means something arises. So when you serve great souls, then the sense of desire to hear about Krishna arises within one's heart. This is the perfection of any service or even varnashrama. It's mentioned in the first chapter, first canto, second chapter, that unless you're developing love for Krishna. What's the verse? Dharma swanastita pumsam vishvaksena katasuya notpadi ed yadiratim shrama evihi kevalam. Sutta Goswami says at the outset of the Bhagavatam, you may be performing varnashrama, you may be expert at whatever you're doing in this world, but if it doesn't lead you to an increase in desire to hear about Krishna, then it's shrama, which means useless labor. So, if one's able to serve great souls, Mahatmanastu Mamparta Daivim Prakriti, or Mahatsevam Dwar Mahurva Muktes, means that's the gateway, the opening. One is able to serve great souls. Yes, service then awakens this desire to hear. But then hearing becomes natural. Srinvatam Swakata Krishna Punya Shravana Kirtana Tridyantakstohi Vadrani Vitunoti Suritsatam. And as one hears, says Sutta Goswami, then Krishna takes notice that you're interested in hearing, and he helps from within the heart. He helps to remove the anarthas that have accumulated there. It's also mentioned in the first canto, first chapter, second verse, Dharma swanastita pumsang vishvakshena katasayat. No, excuse me, Dharma projit kaitavo taraparamo nirmat saranam satam. And it says at the end of that long verse, Vedyam vasa matra shivadam tapam trayamulanam sadyo hridya varudite trakriti bhishushushabhishtakshana, which means that if you take to this, as you take to the hearing of Krishna Katha, because of that awakening of desire to hear by association, by serving pure devotees, then, said, Krishna won't leave your heart. Sadya hridya varudyate trakriti bhishushushabhishtakshana means very quickly this happens, that Krishna decides, I'm going to stay, as Prabhupada said, compact. He stays compact within your heart. And commenting on that verse, Srila Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur quotes a verse from the 11th canto, 2nd chapter, last verse, which is how does that verse start? It's 11 to 55. He's responding to Sajya Hridya Virudite Trakriti Bhishushushabhishtakshana. Now, Vishujyatin na Hridya Vishujyati Hridayam na Yasya Sakshat Dari Rabisha Abhihito Pyagoganasha Pranaya Rasanaya Dirtangra Padma Sabhagavata Bhavati Pradhana Ukta. Actually, this is a description of the most advanced devotee. One comes to advanced stage. But it starts out, Vrishrijati Hridayam da Yasya Sakshat Darir Avisha. Because Darir, Hari is he's directly in your heart. Sakshat Dari, Tvayamastamasta Shastra. So this says also, Hari, he's directly in the heart of every living being. Now, if Vrishrijati Hridayam da Yasya Sakshat, if somebody willingly or unwillingly hears Krishna Katha, this verse says, accidentally hears it, then Hari is inclined to remove tons of sins from the heart of such a person. Then it describes the person who's become advanced in hearing. It says, pranaya rasanaya drishangra padma. That pranaya rasanaya means the ropes of love. With ropes of love, that is, by hearing, one ties up the lotus feet of Lord Krishna, and he can't get away. He's stuck in your heart. Which is also pursuant to the verse, Jnane prayasa mudapasya namanta eva jivanti sanmukaritam bharavidya varta. Stane stita shrutikatam tanuvan manobir ye prayaso jitta jito pyasitaistarilokam. This is Brahma in the 14th chapter, 10th canto, and he says that you should just give up trying to speculate about God, just hear. And he really means it. He said, Jnani Udapasya means just forget about any other process. And he, in the next verse he says, Shreya Shatim Bhakti Mutasya Te Pivo Kushanti Kevala Bodha Labde Te Shamasau Kleshla Eva Shishite Nanyat Yata Stula Tushavagatin. If you think, bhakti, it's too easy, it's just for, sentimentalists or whatever, and you go to some other process, he said, you're an idiot, Brahma is saying. It's like you're the guy who takes the husks of wheat that are already cultivated, that are already harvested. The fruit is gone from inside, and you beat them and try to get something, nothing. So he says, Jnani prayasa mudapasya namante eva. Jivanti san bukaritam bhavadiya vartam. Jivanti means to live. If all you do is somehow or other stay alive, Jivanti san bukaritam bhavadiya, just so you can attend the Bhagavatam class, that's all you do. What do? You just try to stay alive all day long so the next day I can go to the Bhagavatam class. That's all you do? Yeah, that's all I do. And this Brahman says, that's all right. Jivanti san mukaritam bhavadiya vartam. Because by doing that, and whatever position you're in now, you don't have to change anything. It'll change from the inside out. Stane stita shrutikatam tanavan manobir. Because if that's your dedication just to hear about Krishna, then jita jito, the unconquerable ajita, becomes conquered by that person. Pranaya rasanaya. They begin to love Krishna so much just by hearing about him. That was the case with Rukmini Devi. She never saw Krishna, but she wrote this letter. Yasangri pankaja rajasna param mahanto vachantyuma patiri vatman tamopahatya yar yambu jakshana labeya bhavat prasadam jahyam asun ratakushan shatajanma bisyat. She never met Krishna, but she heard about him in the court of her father. She's a princess. So they were talking about Krishna. He said, the more she heard about it, it's like, that's who I'm going to marry. I'm going to marry him. And she was so determined for us, she wrote this note to Krishna and sent it to him. It was like, look, you marry me or I'm going to kill myself through austerities. That's what this verse says. Yes, yangri pankaja raja snapana mahanta. It says, great souls like Lord Shiva, they purify themselves by taking the dust of your lotus feet and putting it on their heads. He said, if I cannot attain your mercy, I'm going to perform such severe austerities that I'll be forced to give up my life. And then maybe after many lifetimes of doing this, you'll give me your mercy and marry me. All she did was hear about him. And then the wives of the Brahmanas, all they did was hear about Krishna from the marketplace. They went to the weekend market. What's that called? Huh? Farmer's market. They went to the farmer's market and they were buying ingredients to assist their husbands in these yagyas. And there were some residents of Vrindavan there. And there was Krishna this, Krishna that, Krishna Katha going on in the marketplace. They heard it, they overheard it, they discussed it, they fell in love with Krishna. So much so that they're exalted way above their husbands. It's way above this so-called Brahmanism, performing yagyas. Becomes a fact that one understands everything by Krishna Katha. As it goes on, Nashta prayeshu bhadreshu nityam bhagavata sevaya bhagavat-yuttama shloke bhaktir bhavati naishtiki. There's an interim period. You start to notice, yeah, maybe this is working. Just like medicine, you take it and you go like, this stuff work? Is this for real? 3 days later, nah, I don't think so. Then 5 days later, maybe I feel something. So nashta prayeshu bhadreshu nityam bhagavata sevaya bhagavat-yuttama shloke bhaktir bhavati. Then tada rajas tamo bhava kama lobade asche. At that time, tada means at that time, but when we were kids, when we do a magic show, you pull a rabbit out of a hat or whatever, you go, tada. So tada means like the conditioned soul who's going to be in the material world forever. He's called Nitya Bada. Aza tada, tada bhava. all the lower qualities, kama, lova, rayashcheye, cheta, iter, anavidam, stitam, sattva, he becomes situated in Shuddha Sattva. By hearing Krishna Katha, everything expunged from the heart. And then, vidyate, evam prasanna manaso, bhagavad bhakti yogata, bhagavad tattva vijnana mukta sangha sajayate. Then he understands for sure, very scientifically. Shraddha Shabd, that means Siddhanta Bolya Chitanakara Alash Iha Hoite Krishna Lage Sudrin Manash, means that he has very clear idea who Krishna is and scientifically understands. There's no budging from that position. And one's life becomes perfect. And Vidyate Hridaya Grantish, all the misgivings are cut to pieces, any knots in the heart. So, hearing is everything. It's the essence of all advice. The essence of all advice, Rupa Goswami gives in the Upadeshamrita. That's the Upadeshamrita, it's the nectar of advice. Then you go into the nectar of advice, and then he says, now here's the essence of all advice. Right? Verse number 7. How's that start? Tanama rupa charitari sukirtananu smrityo kramena rasana manasini yoda tishtan vraje tananuragi jananugami kalam nayad akilamut ityupadesha saram. The saram of advice is just dedicate yourself to hearing, etc. There's other devotional activities. If you read the purport there, you'll get a paraphrase. Prabhupada paraphrases Srila Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur. He says, everything starts with hearing. And all other stages unfold from that. So you have to make arrangement to hear. And Prabhupada says you have to read all of the books. That means all of Srimad Bhagavatam, all of the Chaitanya Charitamrita. What else? Nectar Devotion, Bhagavad Gita, Upadeshamrita, Sri Upanishad. Whatever else is there, you should get all of them, put them on your shelf, and sit there and pray. Please let me read all these books, and then figure out a way to do it. So that's for today's class. Nivrittatarshad upagiyamana bhavavsharat shotramanobhiramat. There's no ambiguity. It's very clear what the process is. You have to hear. And if you're still attached to the material world, then somehow have somebody tie you up and drag you to the Krishna Katha and make you sit down. Prabhupada once said, God helps those who help themselves. He said helping oneself means putting oneself in front of transcendental sound vibration. So if somehow or other you can do that, even if you feel fully unqualified, then the power of the sound vibration will purify. Dear Srila Prabhupada, dear Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, Shri Shri Panchatattva, Shri Shri Radhakir Chor Gopinath, Shri Shri Gaurnitai, Shri Shri Gaurnitai, Shri Shri Gaurnitai, Jagannath Baladev Subhadri. If you so desire, please inspire us to serve pure devotees, develop a desire in our hearts to hear Krishna Katha, and please let us follow the path of the Mahajans in Nityam Bhagavata Sevaya. And also, please empower us to distribute Krishna Katha as it pleases your lordships. Thank you for considering our request. Om Tat Sat. Everyone who agrees with this prayer, in whole or in part, please unmute and say Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna!
Vanchakalpatarishcha kripa sindhabevacha patitanam bhavanibhyo vaishnavebhyo namo namaha anantakoti vaishnaviniki jai.